You're simply the best.
That's right. He's the best. He's the great one. He is the one, the only Mark Levin, and he joins us now live this morning here on Mornings in the Mall. Good morning, Mark.
Well, that's not too embarrassing.
Yeah,
Good morning. How are you?
We like to do good big interview, big
listen, we all missed the Martin O'Malley rally. Yes.
All right, listen, we'll get to Martin O'Malley in a minute. I want to start by talking about what's going on in the news in the last 24 hours. The Patriot Act has lapsed. Some version apparently will make its way out of the Senate back to the House, but for days we will not have a Patriot Act. And it seems that Rand Paul was able to defeat this desire on the part of some in the Senate to continue the bulk collection of phone PIN data. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think he's right about that. I'll tell you, and I'm no peacenik, no isolationist, no extreme libertarian. I worked at the Justice Department for many, many years. The idea, by the way, when they first voted for the Patriot Act, the members of Congress didn't even know the NSA was doing this.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
The traitor leaked it. And so the American people found out about it, and now he's over there hiding in Russia. But all that said, Ted Cruz and Mike Lee have come up with a proposal. I've talked about this several years ago myself when this happened. I don't want the federal government nationalizing private phone numbers that belong to the phone companies. If they can go in front of a judge, it could be a FISA court, actually it could be any court, and even get 100,000 phone numbers if they think they're necessary, good. Let them go and explain why they need 100,000 phone numbers in secret, and the judge will tell them. And there's nothing wrong with it. Moreover, it's not a question of this or we may get attacked. Over and over again, the NSA has been asked, over and over again, give us one example where you thwarted an attack, and they couldn't give one. I'll give you one example. Fort Hood, where we knew he had an Islamo-Nazi, where they wouldn't do anything, they didn't need his phone numbers, and he slaughtered more than a dozen people. I'll give you another example. 9/11, with visa overstays, had nothing to do with tracking phone numbers. I'll give you another example. We have a porous border where the enemy can crawl in here, and we can't catch the enemy. We're importing refugees from the Middle East. There's all kinds of federal policies that are in place. PC, bad, awful policies that threaten the security of this nation. And I'd like to hear people talk about that. The fact is, Rand Paul has made comments that are provocative, but he's doing the nation a great service in having this debate. General warrants, everybody's talking about them. We've talked about them. If you look at the Bill of Rights, they were responding to general warrants when the king would put in place entire communities or entire people, bankers, whatever they were, shippers. Yeah. All of a sudden, all their papers would be taken under a general warrant for the security of Britain. That's why we don't do these sort of things. One other thing. I have less of a problem with roving wiretaps where you're really following the potential perp. That doesn't bother me as much because you're following an individual,
right?
Not phone number. Also, this so-called lone wolf stuff, that doesn't bother me as much because, again, you're following an individual who may be dangerous. But this, let me tell you something. Do you guys really think this dysfunctional, incompetent, ineffective bureaucracy even knows what it's doing with tens of millions, hundreds of millions of phone numbers?
No. They don't.
What the hell's the point of this?
Of course, and this is what drives me crazy about this, Mark. You just mentioned the border. The president yesterday, as this thing was sunsetting, the president said, well, it's not like the terrorists are going to now, take a break because the Patriot Act has expired. And you got Peter King out of New York and John McCain out of Arizona saying that Rand Paul is dangerous and he's putting American lives in danger. But none of them are talking about this open border where an ISIS member could walk across tomorrow with as many weapons as he wants and come after targeting innocent Americans. Doesn't a program like this give people a false sense of security, makes them think, oh, well, they're doing this to stop terrorism, so we don't have to worry about the real threat?
I think it not only does that, but it's enormous use of resources and personnel focused on something that has so far developed nothing. Now, people might say, well, what if it does? Well, what if it does? Well, then you're in favor of a police state. Yeah. Well, what if it does? What if it does what? And by the way, the enemy already knows the program's in place. Do you think the enemy's going to keep picking up phones and calling each other and say, hey, Muhammad, what is it, Abdul? We're going to hit so-and-so on such and such date. Does anybody really believe now that's going to happen? No, it's not going to happen. But that said, if somebody thinks it's going to happen and they have 1,000 names that they want to track, 1,000 phone numbers they want to track, that's fine. Go in front of a judge, get your subpoena, take care of the process and go for it.
All right, so what about, ex-Speaker of the House Denny Hastert being indicted on these charges that he was moving money around in a potentially illegal way?
This law, passed in the 70s, was passed because of drug money, because of mobsters. This is the problem. It's interesting you bring it up in this context. This is why I don't believe in giving such a wide berth to the federal government. It's a law that sometimes is thrown in addition to underlying charges. They throw the stuff against the wall, fine. There's nothing else they're throwing against the wall here. They're throwing the structuring and the lying about the structuring. The blackmail, that's the underlying crime, I assume was a state offense for the statute of limitation in the underlying sexual predator stuff or whatever it was, has run. For the federal government, in my view, to bring these charges without anything more on money structuring is outrageous. This is not intended for this purpose. I know. I worked at the Justice Department. You don't see a lot of charges like this. It reminds me of this former Governor McConnell case, which is another outrage. The guy gave nothing for nothing. And he's going to do prison time, could do what, 4 years, 3, I don't know what it is. On the flimsiest of cases, we want to talk about that. I believe in prosecuting criminals. Yep. I don't believe in making criminals. That's a totally different issue.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of prosecuting criminals, what should the Department of Justice be doing over the Hillary Clinton affair now that we know that some of those emails, and this is the very first, absolutely scrubbed and detoxified group of emails that have been let out, but even those emails some of them had to be held back because it's now retroactively been classified. Shouldn't there be an investigation, a real investigation on this?
I don't know how there's not an investigation of this family. I really don't. This entire enterprise was set up as a charity front enterprise. I could certainly make the case as a charity front enterprise that requires at least the initiation of a criminal investigation before, we get to charges or anything like that, where George Stephanopoulos and the other, what are they guilty of? What are they guilty of? What crime do they... Hey, we have plenty of information here that should trigger an investigation, whether it's the emails, the clear violation of the Federal Records Act, the clear violation of the Freedom of Information Act. But on the pure criminal side, this quid pro quo stuff, it's slapping us in the face every single day. How can it be that a guy like McDonald is charged and convicted, and the Clintons just keep rolling along? We're talking about millions and $150 million. Why do you think people gave them $150 million?
Of course.
Does she give a good speech? My God, she gives the worst speech on the face of the earth.
And what an incredible gift Andrew Breitbart brought us with Peter Schweitzer, man. He really could identify talent, if I do say so myself.
Absolutely.
All right,
Mark, always good to have you,
Yeah,
Mark.
God bless you, the best morning show in America. We appreciate it.
There you go.
Thank you.
That'll make the promo.
He's our favorite listener, Mark Levin.